Welcome, Umesh, for Career Journey podcast. I started this a couple of years ago. I've done about 40 episodes, and my goal behind this is to bring the career journey from different people to inspire people in IT, whether they are in the early career or settled. With that, I wanted to hand over mic to you to share what you're doing right now, and then what your typical day look like.
First of all, thank you. It's an honor actually to be on your podcast. Very interesting. We have got to know each other very well now, and we have become good friends, I believe, at least from my side. So I'm really happy with that. And to those who are listening for the first time, wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm based in London, basically, but I'm from India, and I've been in Europe for 25, 30 years now almost. So you said, like, how do my day progress, a typical day progress? A journey in a startup is quite different from traditional tech jobs. In the morning, I may be an HR manager. By the lunchtime, I'm probably a project manager and a programmer. And by 4 o'clock, I may be an accountant. And by evening, I might become a researcher. So that's the kind of life that I have right now as I'm running this startup. I currently have a team of 15 people spread across the world. 16 now, sorry, I should say 16 because we just recruited the 16th person. But we also have quite a few agents or automated systems that work for us. So my typical day usually begins around 6 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing I do is go for a walk. Actually, I wake up in the morning and just go for 40 minutes of walking. And during that walking, I visualize how my day is going to actually progress. So I visualize literally as to where am I going to sit, who am I going to talk today, what things I want to do today. I also refer to the things that I've done yesterday. So that's my 40 minutes of, let's say, a self actualizing meditation that happens while I walk in the nature. And I live near a wooded area, so that kind of gives me a nice kind of connection to the nature as well. And once I come home, have shower and everything, and then have a breakfast, and immediately I jump into calls with my team because most of my team is east of my location. So I'm based in London, and most of my team is located starting from Asia to Eastern Europe. So they already are well in their day. So if they're in Asia, they are almost at half or post afternoon in their day. And if they are in Europe, they are between 2 to 3 hours ahead of me. So that means that they are well on their way to do the work. And I immediately have an instant team call with people who have specific issues that they need to address on an urgent basis. So I immediately tackle the urgency of the day right at the beginning when I have the energy. And once we have addressed the urgent issues is where I sit down and start writing the things that I have captured in the morning during my morning walk as to things that needs to be done, if there are any ideas that needs to be implemented in everything. And I have a huge kind of a board in my office. So that becomes my kind of, let's say, a thought repository. So high level thoughts I put there so that they guide me even during the day, week, month, and all that. And this basically takes me to almost lunchtime to cover all these aspects. Once that is done, I have lunch around noon, and I also take a break actually. And this is very important for me. I take half an hour nap after lunch, which I couldn't do when I was working for somebody else. So this is the luxury I get when I'm running my own company, because nobody can tell me, why are you taking a nap during the day? But I have seen that has changed my productivity to a great extent, actually. It's like almost I'm resetting my day. I'm resetting my body to have the same energy that I had at 6 o'clock in the morning. That takes me to around 1 o'clock London time. And once I'm past 1 o'clock and I've taken my half an hour nap, then I spend 1 hour very focused on reviewing the work that my team has done, because by that time, the Asian team has finished the day. So then I review the entire work that has been done so far. If there are any points that needs to be communicated to the team, I start making notes and everything, and I make it ready. And I work with a very focused attention during that time. So I turn off my phone. I don't have anything on the screen except the work that my team is doing. That 1 hour for me is my driving force, because that's where I decide how my team is progressing. I decide how my team is going to progress tomorrow, what kind of work they are going to do tomorrow, and all those things I review during that 1 hour. Once that review is finished, I take another break and I go for a run. So that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Every day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I go for 90 minutes of run. I run between 14 to 20 kilometers on an average. In miles, it will turn out to something like, let's say, 8 miles to around 15 miles, so to say. And at varying paces. And again, I go to woods and I run there. So
Really?
what?
Really that much?
Yeah, every day. So when I'm running, I either listen to some of the podcasts that I read, or I join spaces actually. I like X spaces. That's where we met actually. And I find I have some ways of identifying spaces which are very interesting, either from AI, that is my area of work and interest, or even art. And sometimes I even go to mindfulness kind of spaces, or even some of the scientific spaces that I go to. And most of the time, I would remain listener because I would like to listen more than talk because I'm running. Some of the spaces I also join as a speaker, and I keep running when I'm speaking. So people who might listen to this podcast, and if they have been to one of the spaces where I have spoken, they would probably relate to that. That sometimes I'm out of breath because I'm going up the hill or something. So that's what I do. I come back to my office or home office because I have set up an office in the outhouse in my house. And once I come back to my office around 3:30, I take a small break for 10, 15 minutes. Just let's say, what do you call it? The cooling down of the body. I already do cool down when I'm coming back, but then I cool down my body. And right now it is winter. So you don't perspire so much. So that's okay. But if it is summer, then obviously you need to take a shower. So that kind of is a part of my routine. So I adjust accordingly, but I make sure that I'm back by 3:30. Once I'm back at 3:30, I schedule my client calls. So all my client calls usually are scheduled after 3:30. So this 2 to 3:30 time is very strictly sacrosanct, where I have to go for this run, because if I don't go for a run on a particular day, that really builds up a lot of stress in my body in a way, right? I'm tuned to that. So that has become a very necessary routine. It's like breathing for me. And once that is, I get my client calls between 3:30 and 5:30 usually. Most of my clients are based in Europe or US. So that means that it is either later part of the day or morning part of the day. And it's very convenient for them as well. Then I have my client calls till around 5:30. That could be existing clients where we are talking about how the project is progressing, some kind of reporting, some kind of clarifications. And I also have prospective client calls where we are talking about what kind of project we would like to go for and what things can be done. So all those things happen during that time. And then 5:30, I take a break, have a cup of tea with my wife, spend 15, 20 minutes just talking about various things and everything. And 6 o'clock, I have my dinner in my home on the dinner table or lunch. All electronic devices are not allowed. So I don't have access to phone. I don't have access to any kind of devices. It's pure human contact with my family and having food and enjoying whatever little food we eat in the evening, very light food that we eat in the evening. And after dinner, I come back. Usually I would find some interesting space that I can either listen to or participate. And I will then start working on my kind of fantasy projects, as I'm into AI research as well. So a lot of research, paper reading, and all those things happen during that time. Summarization, organizing my knowledge and everything. And that goes on till around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And 9 o'clock, I wind up my day. So this is a kind of a typical day. Of course, every day is a different day. Sometimes I have to make presentations to client, which can go on for a few hours, so that I adjust the day accordingly.
Wow, such an amazing structure that you have. I was, I wanted to ask you a question about that no phone policy.
Yeah.
Who decided that? You, your wife, or how did you come up with it?
So actually, the thing is that the motivation behind that policy is my daughter. So
Mm.
she really disliked when I was having phone with me all the time and everything. And she said, why don't we do this? And it struck a chord with my wife and me as well. So it's not that I'm forced into that, but sometimes I feel like, oh my God, this is important. I need to respond to this person and something. It is always the urge. But over a period of time, I realized that nothing is important. Nothing is as important as spending time, that little precious time with your family. So I always make sure now that it doesn't matter how urgent the things are. You can always delay it by half an hour, but you can spend that half an hour peacefully with your family, whether you're married, whether you're living with your parents, with even with your friends. Like if you're living in, let's say, a shared apartment, have that kind of a culture of spending time in human contact. So it's very vital. I feel that it has enriched me a lot in a way.
Yeah, and I have observed multiple times that we would be in space and then you will take a 30-minute, 40-minute break and you will tell everybody that we'll come back after dinner and things like that. So yeah, you've been following it, which is amazing. People talk a lot about work-life balance or not even that, just how to avoid burnout
Mhm.
and how to re-energize yourself. And everybody knows about these small breaks or Pomodoro techniques or daily and weekly and monthly breaks, but it's really hard to actually implement these small ideas and follow it on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's extremely important. And what I've seen is that I have spent specifically my corporate life and professional career, molding myself into that. Oh, I'll take every 3 or 4 months, I'll go on a break for a few days and I'll unwind myself and decompress myself and recharge myself and then come back and attend. And every time it used to be the same cycle. Like 3 months, you work really hard, you burn yourself out. And then basically what is happening is that you're just repairing yourself, basically, whether it is mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you're just trying to repair yourself. So basically, we are damaging ourselves and then we are repairing ourselves and that damaging again without realizing that we first need to stop the damage. And that's where my life changed when I understood that part is that you don't need to damage yourself. And if you take these small breaks, Pomodoro technique or 2 or 3 very consciously decided breaks during the day, it makes a lot of difference. And I've seen visible difference on all 4 aspects of my life, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally or intellectually.
And what I see that throughout the day, you have that intentional plan, whether or not you're able to follow every day. It seems like you are, but I will ask one question there. I always have a temptation to do one more thing or do
Yeah.
or utilize that one, add another thing in whatever I'm doing. How do you prevent that temptation that, let's say, 3:30 or 5:30 or even before and after the nap time, right? There is always a temptation to do one more thing. So how do you control that temptation?
So I am, as you would say in Hindi, you would say sochu, right? So I have done all the sins and now I'm preaching. Okay.
Mm,
It's that
mhm.
kind of a situation. I have been in that. I have been where I would tell my wife from my office saying, oh, I'm back in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock in the night.
Mhm.
And at 12, she would message me and say, this is midnight. Like you said, you will be back in 10 minutes. And I would say, oh, there was some urgent thing and I was working on that. But now I just need another 15 minutes. And before I realize it will be 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And then what happened is that started impacting my other next day. And that piled up the work. And I got into that kind of a cycle. So I have experienced that. And it has come through experience of burning out that I realized that if I continue on this path, not only I'll not achieve the objectives that I have set in front of me in terms of what I want to do in my life, but I'll make life of everyone around me miserable. And not achieving those objectives and micro objectives or mini objectives of weekly targets or monthly targets that you set in front of yourself, if you're not being able to achieve, that is basically you are in a negative feedback loop. and you will start undervaluing yourself, and you will start doubting yourself whether you have capability of achieving things. So basically, the thing is that, so overall, like in summary, I would say that after learning from that experience, in short, I would say is that I found that journey is as important as destination, so to say, basically. So for me, the work is a journey. And if I'm not enjoying my journey, what is the chance that I'm going to enjoy my destination?
Yeah.
This realization basically changed everything. So I want to make every day enjoyable rather than stressful. So I always look at how do I reduce my stress? What is the way in which I can reduce my stress? And one of the best way is self-care. If you don't care for yourself, there is nothing else that you can do that would make your day better. That's my take.
Yep. 100%. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting the detail. I wanted to go deeper and ask you those questions because from the knowledge perspective, I think most people already know this.
Yeah.
But I hope they see that implementing those is setting your intention, and things will be much more easier than the tactics or techniques for it, because the idea is well known and you just have to set the intention that what's the outcome if you don't do this, or what's the outcome if you do this, both sides of it.
Yeah, I'm a strong proponent of 1% method. So make 1% improvement in the time that you're spending in your day. So 1% of 24 hours basically is what you're looking at improving. That's it. So if you can spend 15 minutes in the day, and if you do it for 1 week, just 15 minutes doing something that you really enjoy, not going through social media feeds, not going through something that does not involve screen in our world, basically. But you really enjoy. If you do it for 15 minutes every day, that's 1%. And then next week, you go for another percent and say, okay, I found this 15 minute in the morning. What other 15 minute I can do in the afternoon? And then you find a third 15 minute. Basically, you need 4 15 minutes in the day for self-care. Once you have those 4 15 minutes in your working day, let's say, if you're like me and requiring 7-8 hours of sleep, I hope you do. But if you require 8 hours of sleep to recharge yourself, then you have 16 hours. If you deduct everything else, we all know about this, right? There are thousands of books written and hundreds of thousands of videos about this. Right. It's about the practice. And I wanted to do something that is practical to me, that fits my schedule, rather than a guy on internet like me talking on a podcast and saying, oh, you should be doing this. I wanted to do something that fits myself. But the basic principles of spending 15 minutes with yourself are powerful. That's the most basic thing. What do you do when you do it? How do you do it? Is entirely up to you, because that's the beauty of those 15 minutes, that you're free to do what you want.
Right. So we'll keep moving from here.
Yeah, sure.
Wanted to touch upon your company, what you're building. Yeah. And then from there, we will go to a slight flashback. Want to hear more about your company, what business you're doing, what company you're building.
Okay. My company currently is in a stealth mode because it's a startup and we are doing some fundamental research. So that's why we don't disclose too much information about it.
Yeah, only information that you get.
Yeah, but the stealth mode name for my company is Ace on Data. So that's the stealth mode name. We will disclose the name once we cross a certain threshold. So there are two parts of my company. One part is where we are developing solutions. So my company is entirely bootstrapped. So and we'll talk about it hopefully if we have time. So I had 3 other startups in my past. And based on the learning of my 3 startups in the past, this particular startup, because of the type of technology and excitement I had around this technology of AI, the objective was to bootstrap so that I can do whatever I want. I didn't want anybody else breathing down my neck, telling me, I have given you $1 million. I don't want you to do this. I want you to do this. So that was the idea. So I bootstrapped my company from day one.
Bootstrap your company, what that mean?
Means I invested my own money. I haven't taken money from anyone else. So nobody else can tell me what do I do with my money and how do I spend money? That's the part. When I started this company, There's a little bit of a backstory about the company, but we'll go into that later on. The first thing was that because I'm bootstrapping and I have limited resources, is to make this company profitable from literally day one. So I started scouting for projects and I started doing some consulting work on the side and started funding the company. And through consulting work, I started getting projects because AI became a buzzword at the beginning of 2023. And I had a lot of corporate contacts because of my previous background. And I started getting projects where we were supposed to implement anywhere from traditional machine learning solutions, regressionary models, all the way to LLMs, building applications on open source LLMs and closed source APIs and stuff like that. And we started building those projects. While doing that, one of the background I had was in finance, and we'll probably touch upon that. But one of the key things that I found out in the LLMs, the large language models, and other models as well, like even if you take any of the video models or audio models, one of the key is temporality. Those models don't have understanding of time as we understand it and we experience it. So the idea was to do research on that area because I knew that if I'm able to crack that particular part of the puzzle, that can have a profound impact. And I wanted to do something that would have a profound impact. So we started doing research in that area. Then we joined hands with a few universities in Europe and also some of the outfits so we took some advisory from Google as well. And we are currently working on that particular area as to how we can have understanding of time as we experience it on three aspects: linearity of the time, the cyclicity of the time. Linearity is the straight line. Time as we experience it is a straight line, right? So that's one thing. Then there is a cyclicity. So every second is repeated, every minute is repeated, every hour, so on and so forth. And then there is acyclicity of the time. So acyclicity is when you employ time. So that means if you go from point A to point B, you are consuming time to go from point A to point B. But that consumption of time depends on multiple factors. So if you're going, let's say, in a car from point A to point B, it will depend on if there is a traffic, if you're driving fast, driving slow. So you're traveling from in the same distance in space. You're consuming the same time that everybody has, 1 minute, 1 second, 1 hour, but the length will be different for different people. So that is basically, so it's not repeating in the same way. And if we are able to encode this into model, and if model is able to understand this particular aspect, then that would open up a whole new world of employing these AI models into real world. So that's basically the research area that we have, where we are doing some very deep research. And we have crossed some thresholds and we are trying to cross some other thresholds before we can come out with some kind of a reliable paper. And a lot of papers have come out in last 1 year and almost all of them have failed basically. So we have learned our lesson from other failures, saying that we shouldn't be too fast and get into rat race of publishing papers, which has now become a thing. Basically, everybody wants to publish their half-baked research, and we are just holding back and we say we will continue. So that's the research part of my company. And there are some couple of other areas also where we are doing some research, but that's not mature enough to talk about yet.
I will be honest that I really enjoyed your description about 3-time model and everything. And probably I've understood 30-40% of everything that you said.
Yeah, I was trying. If you understood 30%, trust me, you are more intelligent than I am. Because I tried to compress not just 1.5 years of work that we have done in that area, but everything that I know about the temporality and everything from my previous work. I compress that into that 2 minute, 3 minute, or I don't know, 4 minute explanation.
Right.
So if you captured 25-30% of that, that means you are really smart.
Sounds fascinating for sure.
No, it's a fact. It's a very interesting area. And yeah, it has very profound impact on how AI is going to have an impact on our lives. So that's my research area.
That's the part of the company, your company, that does the development of the solution for other people. And this research is for other people. That part of
exactly. No, the research is our own. So basically what we're doing is we are generating, because we knew that we will not be able to continue to do research without support from outside. financial
Got it, got it, got it. So the machine learning and all AI solution you're developing for other people, but this research is for you.
Exactly. So we are funding our research from the revenue that we are generating from that. So that's what I meant, that my company has to be profitable from day one.
Right.
Because if we are able to have profit and positive cash flow, then that means that we can finance research without relying on other people. And also, if we advance our research, we'll not be loosed into finding more resources and everything. So that was the idea.
So from here, let's talk about, so you building the company, but you said you have built three other companies, and prior to that, you was in corporate. So I want to understand, and I don't know, should we talk about the corporate world first? But what I wanted to understand that there are many people, including myself, who are in the corporate world. I've spent like 24 years of my life there. And corporate work give you a purpose. So they give you project, they give you opportunity to work in some excellent opportunity that you probably will not be able to do if you're just doing freelancing work, right? The size of the project, size of the mission, and size of the vision that sometimes these projects bring. And then from there to building your own company, it's a completely different ball game.
Absolutely.
And it require some kind of idea, like where you can do hundreds of different type of thing, which one you choose. And then if you chose that, then there are at least 10 other things that you have to work on, which is completely different than what you was excellent at in your corporate world. So I wanted to touch upon what was that journey, what was the decisions, how did you come up with this idea that not corporate, but building the company, and then the journey for those three companies and here. So should we start from what was the emotion, what was you doing in the corporate world, and at what time, what point, what emotion that helped you start those companies?
Yeah. I'll give you a quick rundown because both the career are interwoven. So it's not like I left my corporate life and then I had three startup in a successive manner. And then this is my fault. It didn't happen that way. So they are interwoven. So I was in finance before I started my career in a very small marketing job, to tell you honestly, and then switched to finance very quickly because I always wanted to get into finance. I always liked numbers. I always liked data. And I don't know whether, but there used to be a program like Foxpro. I learned Foxpro. I learned COBOL. I learned Fortran. I even tried my hands at Pascal in those days. But the funniest part is that I never had a formal education in computer science. I took one diploma, which was a long diploma, 2-year diploma with NIIT in India as a part on a side while doing the job. I was doing the job and studying computer science as a part of that. But I never went to university to do computer science. So that's my background. So my learning in computer science or programming or tech world or anything that you say is entirely practical, entirely driven by practical solutions. So when I was in finance, financial analysis, finance probably consumes the highest amount of tech in the world. Anywhere from trading to banking to everything, there is tech. And you can't just, today's financial system cannot function without software space.
And when you was in finance, you was not building software.
Right.
You was using, you was doing the analysis, you was doing whatever, right?
Yeah. I was on non-tech or business side, so to say, in software development field. You have the business side and you have the development side. I was on the business side. I was a consumer of services, basically. So I used to interact with the department of the company and trying to get the solution. When they would delay the solution or wouldn't deliver the kind of solution that I'm looking for, I started building my own solution. Fortunately, I got bosses who appreciated this particular talent or skill I had because they didn't have that skill, and none of the people around me had any skill or motivation even to get into that area. So it was a chance factor. I realized that, oh my God, I can't compete with my colleague to get promotion because they have some other skill sets that I don't, for example. right? Or they may have got part of the business where they are able to perform better, and I've got some constraints because of which I'm not being able to perform. So I was always looking for a way to show that I have more value. So that's where this happened by chance. And I said, oh, they don't know programming, but I know programming. So what if I start structuring something, and I started doing things, and that kind of snowballed into bigger and bigger things, because then people started coming to me asking for, oh, we have this problem with this particular analysis. The department is not being able to support us. Can you help us? And I would say, yeah, okay, let me look at that. And I would spend hours and hours going through Visual Basic code, because it was, the models were built on Excel and VB and everything, going through the code and learning by reading the code literally. And that's how I started developing solutions. Those solutions actually pass the stringent requirement that finance industry has. Actually. So that gave me confidence that, yeah, I can do something about it. So I started studying more and more into that area. Things like value at risk for financial securities. So I was on the fixed income securities side. I wasn't on the trading of, let's say, stocks and all those things side. I was on the fixed income. So bonds, government securities, and stuff like that, which requires a lot of valuation models and everything. So I started building those models. And from that, I came to an idea as to what if I actually start my own company and start offering this as a solution. So that was the genesis of my first company. So I started my own company. I started building value at risk models for various funds. Some of the UK-based companies became my client. My biggest client was a fund called Franklin Templeton. It's one of the largest kind of investment fund in the world. In India, they are known as mutual funds. So they were one of my biggest clients. Unit Trust of India, one of the largest fund in India, was one of my clients. So in those days. So
Did you get this company running while you was working at the job, or you left the job?
So I started the company while I was working at the job.
Okay.
And then we developed the first few models with a couple of people I hired, basically. And I went to companies to make presentation by literally taking a sick leave from my job. And I made presentations. I had some really weird looking business cards and everything with my name, even not properly printed. I would use some pseudonym so that nobody can find out that I was working for some company.
And you was in India at that time?
Yeah. So I was traveling between Singapore and India in those days.
Okay.
So that's when this thing actually rolled out.
Wow.
And then I, like, looking back, it wasn't the best way, but I didn't have any support. I didn't know about funding and this and that. And
yeah, the most important part is that there was some idea, some desire, and you acted upon it.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's the most important thing, versus delaying it and overthinking it and not taking any action.
Yes. But I have my own quirks where I sometimes went beyond just taking a simple action and making things happen. So I sometimes literally like overshot my target, right?
Mm.
And running a business is like landing a plane. You not only want to land the plane at the right point on the runway, you also want to stop the plane before runway runs out, because otherwise you overshoot the runway and that's an accident. So running a business is like that. And I didn't realize that. So I overstretched myself. I started getting clients and I didn't have the capacity to deliver. Sometimes I even overpromised clients. They said, oh, we want this kind of way to calculate this. And I'm like, yeah, we'll do it. And then come back and say, oh, holy shit, how am I going to deliver this? So those things did happen, but then learned the lesson from that. And one of the biggest in that particular startup, or one of the biggest boost or support or learning that I got, was when I got the first investment in that startup. The investment came from SunGuard Systems in the UK. They invested in the company. And then came the shock of Twin Tower attack in the US. And that basically changed everything, because there was a major crash following that in financial markets. Most of the companies stopped making investments into new projects and everything. So companies like mine, which was a small company, becomes the first victim of that, basically. So that's where we ran into some problems. At that time, I had a team of 70 people working with me. And I was responsible for their salary and everything. So that still gives me jitters when I think about those days, because that was one of the most traumatic experience I ever had when I was responsible for livelihood of 70 families. And I myself was a young family, and it was too much to carry on my shoulders. And if I were to look back, I would say having mentors, having people around you to support you is one of the most critical things. It's that scaffolding was missing for me. And that was really heavy. So at the end, what happened is that as it happens, I started running out of money. So all the money that I had saved and earned basically in my company and everything, I started spending that money on paying salaries and expenses and everything, operating expenses, while looking for new clients. And it was a difficult market. And I almost was at the breaking point when SunGuard System said, oh, we can give you some money if you want, but we would like a majority stake. And I was very emotional, young. And I said, no, either I have majority stake or I have no stake in the company. So I will sell you the entire company. But the only condition is you cannot fire anyone for 5 years. If they want to leave the company, that's fine, but you cannot fire anyone. So I negotiated a deal where I got much less money than I would have if I had said, oh, here you go, take the company. But instead I went into this kind of a mode because I considered those 70 people as literally my family. And it was very emotional way. I could have done it much better. Even securing those 70 people, I could have done much better. So that was a very traumatic experience, which basically pushed me into saying, I need to take a break from my life. And I started looking for opportunity to do MBA because I realized that I need to know how to do business. I need to learn how to manage a business. So that's where I decided to go for MBA. I didn't want to go to the US because when I did my research, I found that most of the MBA programs in US mostly were for junior people who had 2 to 3 years of experience. There were 2-year programs, so pretty long programs, very expensive from Indian standard. So I started looking for programs in Europe, which were of a shorter duration. I applied to multiple business schools. I got into 3 business schools, and I started then negotiating with those business schools, saying, I'm coming from India. I don't have money, but you can see my profile. You can see my GMAT score and everything. It's top notch. You would not find my kind of a profile. So I can add a lot of value to your school if you bring me in. And once I do MBA and I go out and I do a job, I'll be a great alumni for your school. And it actually worked. In France, HEC is one of the topmost school, HEC School of Management in Paris. And they actually offered me 80% scholarship. So 80% of my fees were paid by the school, and 20% of the fees came from the French government. So I not only got finance for my entire MBA program, but I also got money for my expenses to live in France. So at the end of MBA, I was actually net positive in my cash balance. So that was the situation. And after that, I decided I don't want to go back to finance straight away. So I joined management consulting. So I joined a consulting firm in Paris. It was a French consulting firm. And I started consulting in international business strategies, basically sourcing strategy. And once you're doing that, you have to deal with lots of data. Like there's a huge amount of data that is thrown at you to understand how the strategy needs to be developed in terms of sourcing. So that's where my software background came back to me and said, oh, this is so much data. And I realized that the other consultants in the company were using traditional Excel files and everything. And I said, why not to use some kind of database to analyze this data? So I started trying with different things and everything, and eventually started using Python to do the analysis. And that was eye-opener. And then I got introduced to R. So started learning R, did a lot of analysis in R, and anybody who wants to learn R, I would say, don't go for it. Yeah. So I did learn R.
What year are we talking at this point?
Yes.
When you was learning R, what year are we talking?
So this one, I would say we are talking about 2006, 2007. I got introduced to R as a part of when I was doing MBA, basically. So I had a really good friend. He was Russian. He was PhD in mathematics. And he also came down for doing MBA. And during discussion, we got introduced to R and we said, oh, this is interesting. He said, so I thought, and I had heard about R before, but I never gathered enough courage to actually dive into it. And that's where I got introduced to it. And then I started doing some basic things, but never really picked it up. And 2006, 2007, I realized that, wow, this is so powerful that I can take any data and analyze in any angle, slice data, dice data, and make sense of and create insights which traditionally people will not be able to make. So from that, basically, the interest came into what if we can do or build something that can do some kind of predictive analysis. And that's where machine learning started creeping into my life slowly and steadily. And in 2007, 2008, I was part of a project where I got introduced to Amazon. So I did a project with Amazon, a very big project. It was on a business side, not on AWS side. I'm talking about Amazon, from where you buy your stuff. So that part of Amazon. And we started studying their entire network in Europe and how to convert it into kind of a revenue stream. And that's where I realized the value of big data, because I saw Amazon from inside, how they were leveraging big data. I realized why they have this AWS service. What is AWS? I started learning all those things. And that kind of opened up the whole new area for me. So with a couple of my friends from my consulting firm, we decided that what we can do is e-commerce is an emerging area. So we can actually set up a platform where we will help French brands, which are very well regarded all over the world because of the designs and everything. We can bring them a platform where they can go to international markets. That was the start of my second startup. And in this particular startup, I actually did it the right way in a way, is I continued with my job and I also built my startup. But while doing that, I also got another exposure. I got a project with Airbus, and Airbus in those days was looking for engineering resources, engineering design resources. And they actually invited the consulting firm I was working for to evaluate if they can outsource engineering services to India.
When you're saying engineering, you're not talking about computer engineering. You're talking about the mechanical engineering, right?
Okay, so it's engineering designing services. So let's say, for example, if you have an aircraft, so you have more than 30,000 different parts. Every part requires different kind of design, different kind of things. So let's say, for example, if you're talking about designing the wings, you not only have to design the wings, you have to carry out material or metal fatigue analysis and all those big models that you have to employ.
And those are AutoCAD type things.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So all those services. So India already had a kind of a good ecosystem in automobile sector because a lot of Japanese and US firms are already outsourcing engineering services to India. Many other equipment manufacturers also outsource those services, but aerospace was not almost non-existent in India. No aerospace industry was interested in sourcing engineering services from India for various reasons. So I came to India with really high level management. I brought the entire high level management of Airbus. In those days, Airbus was a group of companies. It was known as EADS, European Aerospace and Defense Organization. So I brought people from, which was manufacturing helicopters, Airbus, which was manufacturing Airbus aircrafts that we travel in. They were military part of that particular consortium. So I brought all of them to India. We met many companies. We met like Azim Premji and Narayan Murthy and everyone in India, including defense minister. And then finally, I could convince them that India is the right place to start engineering services center, because they were also looking at Latin American companies and also Chinese companies to outsource, and some Eastern European companies. But I could convince them to bring that to India. And then Airbus opened what is known as Engineering Center of Excellence in Bangalore. So that was the start of aerospace designing services in India. That was a moment when I felt really proud of myself of what I've done. And that was a very interesting day. I even appeared on one of so NASCOM in those days was extremely powerful, and they had annual conference. So I even appeared on their engineering services panel in the NASCOM conference that took place in Delhi in those days. Yeah, Delhi in those days. Yeah. So it was a phenomenal experience that I had. And I worked with Europe. I got a chance to work with organizations like this at CXO level, companies like Louis Vuitton, Richemont, which owns all the major watch brands like Cartier and Jaeger-LeCoultre and everything. So I had a very wide exposure. But one common theme across all these things was that I was dealing with data. And data always excited. So when we started this company, this startup on the side with my friends, colleagues, so to say, I also started building a team because this was supposed to be a platform. And being very interested in software, I was given the opportunity to set up the team and everything. So I set up a team in India to develop this platform. So that was basically my first foray from Europe into software. That's the first phase.
So that was your second company though, right?
So this was my second company.
Okay. And then did you do another company then?
Yes. So
Okay.
then after that, I did a
Before
third
we
company.
go there, I'm just amazed by the type of people that you have worked with, type of project that you have worked with, and type of initiative that you have led.
Yeah, to an extent, yes, the hard work paid off. And I also, in a way, I would say, yeah, probably good karma favored me. Who knows, right? So I happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right kind of people, with the right kind of attitude, and hopefully right kind of skills. And it just worked.
Well, there is other aspect too, right? All these situation was asking you to step up, and if you was not able to step up, then all these would not have happened, right? Every situation, whether it is the big project, whether this is the MBA and this management consultancy, all these you probably have experienced 10, 20, 30, 50, I don't know how many, a situation where you was thinking that whether or not you will be able to deliver. How did you step up in those occasions? It's not easy, I know.
It was very tough. It was very tough, and for multiple reasons. So if you go to Paris nowadays, it's much more hospitable environment. Somebody who doesn't speak French. Okay. In early 2000, hardly anybody spoke English. Most of people spoke French, obviously. Most, not all of them spoke French because this is a French country. I'm a vegetarian. French love their meat. They don't even understand what is vegetarian. So I was in a country where I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the culture. I couldn't eat the food that they were eating. And I was trying to make my life while trying to perform on the job and making sure that they see value in whatever I do. I probably lost 5 years of my life, probably, with the stress that I went through. If I given a chance, if I would do the same, or if I would advise anyone to do the same, maybe not. I wouldn't do that. Seriously. I'm here and I'm at this stage. I have to say luck had something to do with it. Yes, I did my hard work and everything, but luck had something to do with it. Otherwise, this entire journey looks like, this cannot happen kind of thing. So every step of the way, it's something like that. So I didn't learn French for almost 5 years and I lived in France. So I got by not speaking literally a word of French. Then I was thrown into a project by a friendly boss, like he was friendly, but he was my boss. And he said, "Oh, we are taking up this project with the naval systems in France." So the company called DCNS, which manufactures submarines, nuclear submarines and nuclear plants and stuff like that. And he said, "Oh, we have got this fantastic project where we are going to help them in understanding the landscape in Brazil and Chile and Poland and India. And I know you have experience in aerospace and defense in India, but you will get much more exposure because you'll be working with Poland and Brazil and Chile and all those places. Would you like to join the project?" And obviously, this is so exciting. So I was like, "Yes, of course." But I said, "That's a French company. And I know that it's a French government company." but I don't speak a word of French. And he said, no, we have spoken to the client and they are fine with it. And we go for the first meeting, the kickoff meeting. And I was supposed to lead a small team. I was manager of the team. And I was part of the global organization that was basically going there. And we are outside the meeting room. And my boss tells me that, by the way, they said that they will not accept English. And I was entering the meeting room knowing that I have to speak in French, while knowing that I can't speak French. And I was the team leader. I was the manager of the team. So I cannot even ask anyone else to say, oh, no, you go and present. Because the client will say, if you're a manager, then why are you putting subordinate to present? So I got up and I started speaking in French. I don't know how. I still can't figure out. And this is real story. I'm not making this up. I was so changed that day. In the evening, I met my friends who were French, obviously. And whenever we met, we always spoke in English because they knew I couldn't speak French. And that evening, I had so much courage that the moment I met them, I started speaking in French. And they were actually shocked. And they said, you are really playing with us. You're doing something. It's not possible that you can speak French. But what I realized is that by spending those 7 years in France and listening to French all the time, and I did make something very different. When I was at home, I always listened to French radio. I like music, so I would always put on radio. I never liked TV, so I never watched TV. So I always put radio on, and the radio will always be in French. So they will speak in French, and my brain was actually picking up French. So that's how it happened. So all these little anecdotes tells you that, oh my God, this journey had so many chance factors that even one of those chance factor had not worked in my favor, the life would have taken a completely different turn. And I think I'm not unique in that. I think it happens with everyone. It's a question of whether you realize that or not. And in my case, probably I've realized the points that I probably could see, but there may be some other points also that I have not realized yet. Maybe I'll discover 5 years down the line and say, oh, hang on a minute, that thing that happened that day while talking to Vinod on a podcast, was that trigger that changed something? Yeah, it's profound things that happen in our life and we sometimes don't realize. And when you look back, you realize that, wow, that point in that time and space was the point where your life actually changed.
I'm glad that I asked that question. And life gives opportunities and occasions where you have to step up. And sometimes we do, sometimes we couldn't. But that's how we keep growing, I guess. That's how we keep growing. How about we take like next 5 minutes to talk about the other company and then how bringing it all together.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. When I started so during my second startup, the genesis for the third company was already there, basically. What I realized is that I can leverage all these data that exist there and much more than that to do something that is very unique, is to build an e-commerce brand of my own. So my wife always wanted to do something in that area. So my wife and I actually started together an e-commerce company. And we decided to launch a range of leisure wear apparels, which are made from 100% organic cotton and are dyed in natural colors, natural dyes, basically, not using any kind of chemicals, because we are very health conscious. I grow my own food in my garden and all those things. So we were really unhappy with all the chemicals that go into clothing and everything. And I'll tell you how I know, because I did one of the consulting projects. One of the biggest thing that has helped my life is all these consulting projects, where on one fine day, I was working in aerospace. On another fine day, I was flying to Geneva to meet Rishmo to talk about watches and high value watches and everything. And on the other day, I was traveling to China on behalf of Louis Vuitton to find out if there is a way we can source some of the things that go into those bags that cost $30,000. And I don't know why they cost $30,000, but yeah, I know. But so I got that exposure, which was very varied, had no connection with each other, but it was a lateral knowledge that I was gaining. So from that, we decided, okay, I have this experience. I have these things. And one thing that we didn't talk about was as a part of my work, I got introduced to scikit-learn in 2010, 2011. So
Okay.
scikit-learn is the machine learning framework that you use for
Oh,
creating
okay.
different traditional models. And it just happened that one of the parties I got introduced to somebody who was working in INRIA, and INRIA is the institute in France that basically wrote scikit-learn. So like it's going to the source kind of thing. And that person introduced me to some other people. And then I did a course on the side to learn scikit-learn properly. So that is one of the biggest, let's say, computer science training that I got so far. And I learned scikit-learn really well. And that helped me a lot in building a lot of things, actually. So that was my real initiation into machine learning, basically. So that happened 14 years ago from today. And from then that I never looked back, because everything that I built afterwards had some of the other component, whether it was inventory management. I built my own model to forecast inventory based on how many orders we are receiving and what is the weather, because we were selling apparels, jackets and stuff like that. So it was linked to the weather. So I even incorporated those factors into inventory forecasting. So all those models that I built for my own business actually kept on boosting my knowledge every day, because I had to do things which would affect my own pocket. I wasn't doing it for a client. So that's how basically it happened. And then as a part of so that e-commerce company went very well, and we took an exit from the company because we got a very good offer, and we are mostly selling in the US. So it was a US based approach. So imagine that I was sourcing garments from India, from Karur in India. I was sitting in UK and I was selling in the US. So I had to figure out all the things that happens around that, logistics, this, that, client returns, how to sell to customers, how to run Google ads, all those things basically. And everywhere, every small part, I was writing different types of models that would do that for me, because I always liked automation. So that's basically was my start as far as machine learning is concerned. And then it was part of everything that I did. So every project that I did, I always made sure that I get into the data side of it, of the project, and then I work on the solutions basically. And I got introduced to Dialogflow, Google Dialogflow for customer service, because then you can automate customer service pipeline. And I was like, wow, you can have a chatbot that you don't have to monitor and can talk to customers like you would do. Also, although it was very crap compared to what we have today. But in those days, it was like eye-opener kind of thing. And then I got introduced to models like BERT and GPT-2 and then everything. So basically, I got initiated into NLP, so to say. So that is a precursor of our LLMs today, natural language processing. And that's where I spotted the opportunity. And I told myself that the day a computer talks back to me and it becomes difficult for me to decipher whether it's a computer talking or human talking, I would start my own AI company. So that was the day. That was my decision. So I had a small poster. Computer talks back to you. You make that computer. And on 30th of November, 2022, birth of ChatGPT. I was already part of OpenAI's different model testing and everything before, because of GPT-2 and DALI and all those things. And I get this email from OpenAI saying, we are launching this. I immediately go and sign up. And I didn't sleep for 3 days. All the schedule and everything was out of the window. I didn't go to my job. I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I was constantly chatting with ChatGPT, trying different things, everything from programming to maths to reasoning to everything that I did before with other models. I did everything with ChatGPT. And I realized that this is it. We have crossed what is known as event horizon. We are entering a new world. And I didn't want to miss this opportunity. So on 5th of December, I sent my resignation. And that was the birth of my current company.
You was working in this management consultancy just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I did not connect the dot on that. I thought you've
Yeah.
been retired for some time.
No. So this current company was born literally on 6th of December,
Okay.
2022. I got my first client, I remember, on 14th of Jan, on Makar Sankranti Day. I got a confirmation email from the company that I already knew. I knew the senior management and everything. Is a Swiss company in appliances and everything. And I had submitted a proposal to them saying, this is what we can do for you. This is the new model. I had done some demonstrations and everything already by that time. Really crappy Python-based chatbot that we had built, but we showed them by scrapping the data from their website and their catalog and everything and showed them everything. I already had one person working with me at that time because I had somebody in my mind for a long time. That person was based in Serbia. We were already in touch. I had used his services before. So I said, I'm starting my company. Do you want to join? And he said, oh, yeah, hell, let's go and let's build something. And that was the start. And on 14th, I got my first client. And then there was no looking back because everybody wanted to get into AI. Every company wanted to implement something in their pipeline. And we found wonderful opportunities. And that was the start.
The biggest thing that I saw in your story is your ability to be able to think high, large, I don't know how to say that, and then act on it and step up to whatever occasion it is. Many people, including me, have this mindset of some kind of belief, some kind of limit to whatever ceiling it is, right? But seems like you don't have that ceiling. So I want to ask, is it the upbringing? Is it some kind of affirmation? It is some kind of whatever system that you have used. How did you build yourself like that, where you was able to do such humongous thing, or your ability to think big and actually work on those and take actions?
One of the things was no plan B. So I lost my dad when I was very young, and I don't have any brother. So I had nobody to guide me what to do. So nobody to tell me that if you get bullied in school, what do you do? Nobody to tell me what is the best way to talk to people, to make friends. Everything that you learn from your elder brother or your father or your uncle, that support system did not exist. I grew up without that support system. And that means that I faced a lot of things where there was nobody there to show me the way out. Whether it is on a cricket field, getting harassed by a couple of people who didn't like because I was playing well or I was not playing well, right? Or in a football team, getting pushed around by people because they knew that there's no elder brother protecting me. So I had to find my way out. And so whenever I was in adverse situation, the only thing was I knew that there's no plan B. Nobody is coming there to save me. Nobody is coming there to help me out. And it worked both ways. Like it also pushes a lot. It puts a lot of stress and pushes you beyond your limits, but it also breaks you in a way. I'm not saying it was the best situation, but the only thing that I can see is that I had no plan B ever. I had nobody to fall back on. So I knew that if I fall back, I'd fall. And if I fall, I'm the one who will get hurt. So I was always afraid of that. That kept pushing me to just keep going. So that's what I do. Just keep going.
It was powerful what you just said. It was powerful. So thank you for sharing that. I know we are close to finish, so I'm going to ask you this question. Is there anything that I have not asked you, but you want to share?
Oh, you have asked. You asked almost everything. I think we have covered a wide range of.
Okay. Is there any question for me?
Question for you. Yeah, I have many questions for you.
We're probably going to do another podcast.
But it has to be the reverse podcast, actually. I have to be the interviewer and you have to answer the question, right? Because I'm always intrigued by people like you who take actions. I've seen you already, like in last 1 week itself, you have taken some action. I don't know whether you want to talk about that or not, but you took the action and created accountability channel. And that's what I like. That's what I love about people, like people taking actions. The only question I have for you is, how do you drive yourself every day? because I'm here to learn as well. I'm learning every day from every person that I meet and talk to. And one question that I always ask everyone, whether I'm getting interviewed or I'm interviewing someone or talking to someone, is what drives you? What is that one thing that you can put above everything else that you would say, this is what drives me?
I think what drives me is doing something above and beyond that I could think of. And there was a time like 3, 4 years ago where I was almost in the direction that what's my purpose?
Mm.
And I didn't find my purpose, but I was able to find this signal that whatever giving you energy and whatever is draining your energy, just listen to that. And that will drive you, that will guide you to a purpose. And prior to that, I think my drive was there was a time when I was really low during my engineering and after my engineering. And once I got into software and people started respecting me for what I was doing, I think that made me more like a workaholic to produce more of it. Like I was after that attention and after that recognition. And at some point in the last 4 or 5 years, I realized that I have to change all that direction. And now I'm mostly driven by the exploration, driven by the idea and implementing those ideas. And one last thing is whenever there is a situation where if we are in office or even if I'm hiking and I'm like 80% there or 70% there and last leg, or if you're working on a project where if there is a sense that we don't know whether or not we will reach the end finish line, somehow that gives me so much energy where people start making like excuses that, oh, this may have happened, it was not my fault. I put all of myself saying, let's do it. If it doesn't work, it's my fault, right? I take the entire ownership for whatever. So I think those type of things are what drives me, like that extreme ownership or that extreme sense of reaching to the finish line and last mile. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. Okay. Taking ownership. That's great. That's what makes you who you are, right? That's what makes you reach where you are. So, really great. I'm glad I asked you that question.
Yeah, thank you.
It's something new that I learned about.
I know we are over time and you have to go. So thank you so much for coming to this podcast and sharing your journey with me. We have to come back. I think there are more meat in this story that we can talk about. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinod. And it was a pleasure. So, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Bye for now.